Okay, awesome. Okay, hi Eric, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's start. Hey guys, it's Eric from foundersbeta.com, and I'm so delighted to have Connor from Pilot Plan. Thank you so much for
Just
joining.
Pilot, actually.
Oh, Pilot. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect, even better.
yeah.
So,
Pilotplans.com was available. Pilot.com was not. So we
right,
had to take Pilot Plans. Yeah.
right. The challenge for every startup is how do you name it, right? So for sure. Well, thanks again for joining. So love to hear about your story. I mean, you've been in startups for some time, so yeah, let's hear. How did you get started in this space?
Yeah, yeah. So before I answer that, just for anyone listening, probably quick little bit about me so that you know why you should maybe care. So this is probably going to be good for anyone who is interested in entrepreneurship and wants to get into it. I can tell you a little bit about my story, and we'll talk about sort of the things that I've learned and like how you can apply those. But hopefully it'll also make it useful for existing entrepreneurs and some of the things that worked for us at Pilot and sort of our approach to that. Just to kind of give that quick intro. So yeah, about me. Previously, I've done sort of a number of things. I went into university and I'd always want to go to business school because my dad, he's a big partner at one of the big four accounting firms, and I always wanted to be like him. But I ended up going the entrepreneurial route because, well, I just thought it'd be a lot more fun, and my dad was already in the corporate route, so I decided to do that. And my sort of first job in university, I worked for this company called Sonder, which was then at the time called Flatbook, and I was one of their early employees, and they're now like a unicorn startup. So that was my first, I guess, like entrepreneurial experience. I brought their business to Vancouver, and I sort of expanded it here. But at the time, I was really looking to just sort of get into entrepreneurship and get experience. And I think what a lot of people think they need to have like an idea or they need to have something to sort of do first. And I don't actually think that's true. I was actually turning 20. This was, I guess, in second year, and I've just gone through a big, like, terrible breakup. So I wanted to do something really big for my like 20th birthday, and I ended up deciding to throw a 400-person yacht party for my
Okay.
birthday. Not because I could afford this, but because I sold tickets for it. I did a whole like market research
Wow.
thing, and I nerded out with my like engineering friends about like the market research model I had built to do this. And anyways, long story short, I threw this big party. I actually made money on the night. I made like $800. And then after that, I realized that maybe I was good at like throwing events. So I decided, okay, we're going to throw events to make money as a student, so I could start
Right,
some business.
right.
And I'm sure everyone listening to this probably knows what like an event promoter is at university. I did not want to be an event promoter, but I realized a
Right.
lot of people did. So we started a micro influencer agency where we worked with brands like Molson and Jägermeister and obviously the large entertainment companies, and connected them with students who basically wanted to be promoters, so like micro influencers. And that was sort of my first taste of entrepreneurship. I learned all the things. This is really important. I learned all the things I didn't know. I think it's really important people get that sort of experience.
Hmm.
Like I had to manage at one point like 400 students. I was managing the payroll, the accounting, we had a CRM, like we had all the different technology, and that's when I realized that I really wanted to get into tech. And so when I ended up running the business for a couple of years, it went really good. We made like 100K in our first year, which was pretty good, but then students were really difficult to like manage, and so it
Right.
just it wasn't something. Basically, we were having success with this event marketing and like influencer stuff, and we just kind of ran with it. But it wasn't like a premeditated, like, okay, let's look at all of our different options and decide, okay, these businesses are the ones we're going to test.
Right.
It wasn't sort of like that, which is how I think you should start a business. But the point is, the reason I was telling that story is because it's really important you learn what you don't know. And I think getting
Right.
exposure working at a startup or doing one of those things is a great way to do that. But moving on to sort of me graduating, it's my last university. I took time off took some time off of school to focus on this influencer agency thing. And now I'm in fourth year, and I spent my fourth year literally just learning everything I could possibly learn about all the things I realized I didn't know. Right. So I would read about like sales strategy and management strategy and all these different things. And it was sort of this ridiculous year. But then I was graduating, and I ran into what probably a lot of entrepreneurs ran into. And I was trying to wonder, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, what is my next preneur? Right.
Right.
So like I didn't know what I was going to work on. I didn't know what I was going to do. And
Hmm.
so I was trying to like basically figure this out. And so I did something that some people do. I'm a huge nerd, so I did this, but like I started asking myself, why? Like, why do I want to be an entrepreneur? So I use what's called like root cause analysis, basically an engineering term. I decided, okay, well, why do I want to be an entrepreneur? Well, I want to make an impact. I want to make money. I want to be respected. I want to have autonomy. I want to have all the things, right?
Right,
And
right.
I asked myself, well, why do I want those? And I just kept asking why until I got down to this really weird, like philosophical place of basically questioning what the meaning of life was.
Right.
And whoever's listening to this, like, it doesn't really matter if you're religious, spiritual, atheist, whatever. You know, there, to me at least, there isn't a reason why anything like exists. Like, why does God exist? Right? Why does anything exist? Like there's no real reason to it even. And so because of that, that can be really depressing for a second. I think that's called nihilism. I'm not exactly sure, but it can be really depressing for a second. But then it's also super freeing because you sort of realize that nothing you do really matters. So you should really just try and do things that you're going to enjoy the most. And so that's where passion is so important. And at the end of the day, like being happy is really just the chemicals in your brain. It's oxytocin, it's dopamine, it's serotonin, endorphins. And you get those last two from like sex and skydiving and food and your parents and things like that. Hopefully not in that order. But you know, the dopamine and oxytocin, you get those from your day-to-day lives. Like dopamine is sort of this anticipation chemical. So when a movie's coming out a month from now, you're happy about that, even though literally nothing has materially changed in your life. And that's effectively humans' ability to like discount future events to a present-day value, which we colloquially call imagination. And oxytocin, that's more why we have empathy, and that's why we feel love, and it's why we like telling stories to one another, because we get to re-experience it ourselves. It's also a form of like social capital. So I basically decided if I want to be happy, and I think this applies to literally anyone's career, you should really, it's really this simple. It's doing cool things with cool people that you can look forward to. So I define that as like social entrepreneurship, which is making as large of an impact on as many people as you possibly can in as large a way as you can in as direct a way, feedback loop wise as possible, which is one of the reasons I like B2C. It's a little closer to the end user, right? As opposed to maybe B2B, like you could serve, we're a travel company, we could serve an airline, help them serve their users, but then we're not almost getting to see the net end goal of that. I think those are perfectly valid businesses, but I think it's harder to get that net aggregate improvement.
Right.
And so that's what I realized I wanted to do. I wanted to do those things. At the time, I didn't know that meant travel yet, though. So at the time, I was applying for jobs, and I was just looking for the lowest, like, mental load job I could possibly find, just so I could make money and then work on my company.
Right.
Figure that out.
Right.
Yeah, and so I applied for this customer support role at a company called NiceJob, which was founded by a guy named Lars Christensen. He's a this excellent like product guy. He wasn't like sort of an operator or business guy. So he he had built a business, didn't really have any revenue or anything yet. It was just a product at that point. And it's fine. And sorry, just one of my placement.
No
and sort of lost my train of thought. Right, sorry. And I applied for this support role, which is I would have been the first employee. And I knew I was going to get this job. Like, this is not a difficult job, frankly.
Right. You started there, right?
Yeah, and so what ended up happening was I decided, well, if I'm going to work here, I want it to be a well-run company. So in addition to applying for this role, I literally sent Lars like a I don't know, it must have been like a 20-page PDF doc about all the things he should be doing differently about his business, which is a little ridiculous, to be honest. Like, I told him like he should change his like copy, and I said you should use these tools, and I said,
oh my God, right.
you should make your company mission this, because that's how you can make this like SaaS tool. So NiceJob helped companies automatically collect reviews on social media and sites like Facebook and Google and whatnot. And I told him that he should make the mission to help companies get the reputation they deserve, right? So like, so a bunch of different things like that. It was sort of ridiculous. And, we had a couple chats, but what ended up happening is I got on a call with him, and in the first like 10 minutes of that call, it went from me applying to be this customer support person to him effectively offering me to run the business end of his company, which is not something I was expecting to happen.
Right.
He's a bit of an older, he's not old, but he's older than me. And so it was an opportunity I wasn't expecting. So I ended up joining that business as a partner, and we grew that company in 3 years to a $3.5 million annual recurring revenue, 35 employees, and we had an healthy eight-figure exit last year. And that was NiceJob. And so as a result of that business, and this is why, it's really important you have lots of little wins that you can build up to things, because it's your reputation is ultimately the thing that is going to drive your success in life, I think, more than anything.
Right.
As a result of that, that interaction and whatnot, Next Canada, Startup Accelerator out of Toronto, they reached out to me during Vancouver Startup Week. So we had won the New Ventures BC Startup Award. That was NiceJob, and told me I should apply to this accelerator in Toronto.
Right.
And at the time, I was starting another company because we had decided we wanted to sell NiceJob, and I was sort of getting ready to transition out of that business once we had sold it.
Amazing.
And so how I came up with Pilot and how that started is, I started NiceJob, and sort of a year or so in, I started thinking about, because I'm always thinking about the future, I started thinking about like my next steps. And when I saw the growth of the company, and we planned to sell it eventually, that was our exit plan. And anytime I had any business idea, literally any idea, I would put it in a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet had all the ideas in one column, and it had all the decision criteria in all the other columns. So it was, things like, how easy is this for SEO, getting people to find you on the internet, right?
Right.
B2B companies, it can be often quite difficult to do that, right? But travel is one of those things that has an enormous amount of search opportunity, right? Same with a lot of consumer, like food, another great example of that. I said like, okay, who are we serving? Like, how easy is it to scale something like this? What would the potential churn and retention rates be? Like, just sort of like all the different like components of what I think made a good business. So I looked at macroeconomic factors, microeconomic factors, sort of product factors, sales and marketing factors, like really just everything. And you don't actually have to go through all those factors for each idea, but what you do have to do is you start with the most important ones, which is like, would I even be the person to build this? Right? Do I care about this thing? And then sort of as a process of elimination, I started just eliminating these ideas until I got down to the ones that I thought made the most sense. And then, as you get further along, you just answer more and more questions because you're trying to process of elimination. And as a result of this, me graduating and wanting to like help people, have more happy experiences and these sort of things, I decided that I wanted the mission of my company to be, at the time, help people have happier lives through shared experiences, which eventually became Pilot. And that's really, there's three components to that. There's helping people make new relationships, helping them improve the ones they have, and doing that through this lens of shared experiences. So while I was at NiceJob, I went on a trip. I was backpacking around Europe, solo traveling, and I was in Greece, and I had taken an ATV in Santorini. I was up at the top of this mountain, and I was just sort of like looking down at how beautiful and everything was. And solo traveling was such a freeing, like powerful experience. You really become a better version of yourself. And I decided like, I'm having all these amazing experiences while I'm traveling. Why is it so hard to have these like amazing experiences like at home? And so the original scope for Pilot was not actually travel. I wanted to build what's called the local experience marketplace, which we will probably eventually build with Pilot anyways. This is before COVID. This was 2019. And that's what I went into Next Canada with. So the idea was, in university, you make friends really easily because you're meeting lots of different people, and you, how do I put this? You meet people with shared values of you, and then you end up, becoming friends outside that. But when you graduate, it's much harder to do that. It's harder to make friends, and people don't take a cooking class because they want to learn how to cook. You can do that on YouTube. They take it because of the social experience, and it's fun. So I wanted to help people have more of these experiences. But there's a lot of problems with a marketplace model. You need users to get vendors and vendors to get users. And then COVID hit. So that didn't make sense, right? We were going to help people have more of these experiences. And I realized, again, because of my traveling at the time, that travel was one of those types of shared experiences that everyone loved. And so we wanted to figure out, how can we help people travel better? And because I had spent a lot of time planning trips, and it's really fun activity. And that was not a great experience, like information scattered all over the web, like trying to coordinate group travel as well as just particularly hectic. So that was sort of how we got into Pilot, right? And so I started that while I was at NiceJob. We sold it to Paystone, and then I know one of the questions you wanted to go over was like what it was like to transition out of that. Well, honestly, like it was sort of just a gut feeling, but I also had enough of a nest egg that I could leave, afford to pay myself, and eventually get the company to a state where, because I'd saved up for a few years, and so I could get the company to a state where I was happy with. But coming back to what I said about the idea thing, I don't think companies should start with an idea. They should start with a problem. And so the book I recommend absolutely everyone read is The Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. It's an awesome book. It's very tactical. You need to fall in love with a problem and validate that that problem exists for people. And you can get more specific with this by quantifying it as like underserved customer needs. So that's things that people find very important, but they're otherwise dissatisfied with. So in Uber's case, people, it's very important to get from point A to point B, but they're very dissatisfied with cabs. That's taxis. Like that's a clear underserved, customer need. And you can, that's a specific enough problem that you can improve on it. You're trying to look for problems like that. And for us, we identified that people, they love traveling, love planning travel was very important to them, but they hated how all this information was scattered all over the web. They, it was very stressful and chaotic when to plan with lots of different people. They wanted it to be a seamless, fluid experience. They didn't like having to use like 8 different apps for bookings and things like that. There's lots of different sort of components to it. Yeah. So anyways, that was a big spiel about the origin story, but also sort of like how we transitioned into it. And eventually I just, left. It was the end of summer of 2020, 2021. And that's, so I sort of worked 2 full-time jobs like a year.
Right on. Yeah. So talk about the, the first version of the current product. What was it like? Like, did you start it out, or what was it like?
I think the most perhaps insightful thing I can say about this is that the first version of your product, I guess, depends what you define as a product. So like I don't think you need to build a product the first version, and we didn't even, like, we had MVPs, minimum viable products, but also minimum viable prototypes, which is another form of MVP. And so before we even built a product, we just created landing pages where I directed ads for people, and I ran like 8 different ads, and they were all the same ad but with different benefits in the copy, just to see which ones would get the most clicks, to see like which benefits people cared about, and then the same thing with features. And so that was the first like anything really. And then we just keep doing more granular research, like, okay, what problems do people care about, what are the sub problems that they care about, what features do they care about for those. And then eventually we got to this point where we decided that a social trip planner, a platform to help you discover, plan, book, and share experiences with friends, was a great place to start, because you can really build so much on top of that. You can layer in features like super cheap flight notifications, or you can get your travel visa with us now in a few clicks, for example. Like, there's lots of cool things you can do with that. But the first version, it took us actually a fair bit of time to build, longer than it would have with NiceJob, because and this is the really important thing that people don't realize, and that if I had known, I might have done things a little differently. If your MVP, if your product is a simple user experience, it's one flow, right? So NiceJob was a marketing automation software that helped you collect reviews. You literally signed in, connected your CRM, and hit send invite. That was it. That was an MVP. So that's what you could have done. You could have even done it simpler than that. You could have had someone sign up, put in their email for a person they want to invite, and then use Zapier to send an invite. That could have been an MVP. It wouldn't have been as good, but it would have been an MVP. In our case, because people plan trips very differently, they use Google Docs, they use Google Sheets, and they don't all plan them the same. Sort of like Notion or Canva, like, there's not one way of doing things. And so when you have more than one way to accomplish a user experience, you have to design for that level of flexibility. And that's really hard to do in an MVP. So it took us about a year to actually get, well, that's not entirely true. We had an alpha out in 2020, January of 2021. And because you can't properly test a user experience that fluid in a low fidelity, like prototype or mock-up or something, like in Figma, you have to actually build the thing and release it. And we did, and we learned a lot about what didn't work, which is exactly what we want to learn, right?
Exactly.
If you're not, like, I think this is I'm forgetting the guy's name, the guy who founded LinkedIn, Reid
Hoffman.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of product, you release too late. And so that's what we did. We released it. It was a private beta, granted, but or private alpha actually. But that was the first version. And I actually made the cover photo of my Facebook at the time, like the super OG, like, login page. It said like message Jun to get access or something on it. It was so funny. But anyways, like, that was the first version. We got a lot of feedback, and then we spent basically a year getting it to where it is now. And it's been going really, really well where it is now.
Amazing.
We've gotten a fluid user experience that anyone can use. But yeah, like thinking about release times and cycles based on the degree of malleability and flexibility your user experience has to have is a really important thing, because if you can't afford to wait a year to get an MVP out, for example,
Right.
you shouldn't do that. Like if we
Right.
had started with like cheap flight notifications as the first feature that we built, that could have been a standalone product right there. And it, honestly, it will be a feature of what we're building now, but that would not have taken us half as long. It would have taken us a few months to hack together, if that, right? Because that would be an email
Exactly.
service or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
So the sooner you get out with the better, right? Get some feed
yeah,
validation going,
yeah.
right?
But at the same time, if you're building a platform where you can build lots of things on top of it, sometimes you have to think about, how can we make it a little more malleable like that and
Right, right,
flexible. But,
right.
in our ideal case, maybe we would have started with something that's also platform, but didn't have like 30 different ways to accomplish one task, right? Like this is
Right,
how you
right.
can like organize your trip plan. There's so many different ways you can do it in our tool, just like something like Canva. You can design a image million different ways, right? So how do you build,
Exactly.
how do you design for that user
Exactly.
experience?
Exactly. So shifting gears to like
Yeah.
culture and building team, what was your experience like building
Yeah.
the team currently at Pilot?
So yeah, so one of the things that makes, I actually think we have a really easy time of doing it in Pilot, and the reason I think we have an easy time doing it in Pilot, and it's only going to get easier, is because one, it's a industry that everyone loves, travel.
Right.
Two, our target audience are the same types of people that would want to work for our company. Right? When it comes to like if we run ads trying to get users, those are the same people who want to work for us. We actually already have someone on the team now who was a user first. That's how they found out about us and now is working here.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? This is an advantage of a certain companies, particularly in
Exactly.
B2C. It's, you can
Right.
do it in B2B, but it is more challenging. Like my last business, it targeted home service professionals who were not techies, right? So that
Right.
any ad spend did not help us hire people. But at
Exactly.
Pilot,
Right.
it does.
Right.
And I think that's huge. So that's been a big benefit to us. Like people want to work at a fun job. The other thing is we are very social impact driven. Like,
Right.
travel maybe doesn't sound that way. Like when you think of social impact, you think of like med tech and health tech to help people like survive. But if
Exactly.
anyone's familiar with like the whole like hierarchy of needs thing, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which apparently I think is actually a ripoff of some indigenous thing. But anyways, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those bottom levels are survival, but the higher levels are things like belongingness and friendship and
Right.
self-actualization and experiences. And so, for us, like we want to help people have more of these. So our company mission now, it's a little more nicer sounding, a little scientific. It's now to help people have an awesome time and make memories, right?
Right.
So when they're like 80 years old and they're looking back on their lives, they can say to themselves like that they didn't just survive, but that they actually lived. And so like that's to me just as important as surviving, frankly.
Right.
Because if you've ever known anyone with like mental health issues or whatever, then sometimes surviving is not actually that great. So having a really fun, awesome life and help people have more of those experiences with people they love and meeting more people, that's what we care about. So that's a big focus of ours, and a lot of people can get with that and gravitate toward, and it's fun to work on. So I would just say like really try and align the goals of your business and what you do and why you do it with the type of people you're trying to recruit and hire. And the other thing that we do is we give people like a ton of autonomy. I try and avoid managing people entirely. They have their goals, they set their goals themselves. We hire them for specific functions, but they ultimately are the ones deciding like how and what to do. Things. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next for Pilot? Any exciting anything you can share, of course, publicly.
Yeah. So we've raised a little bit of money. I'm not going to disclose what that amount is, but we've raised a little bit of money. We have, our engineers right now. We recently joined the Creative Destruction Lab in Toronto, and so I'm actually going to be in Toronto next week for that.
Amazing.
And we're working on really a variety of things. The main things are just constantly improving our user experience. Like I think a lot of founders, they sort of turn their company into a feature factory, and I don't think that's the right approach.
Right.
Especially once you have something that seems to be getting traction and working, make that better, refine that first before trying to add a bunch of other stuff. So right now we're just really looking to make the user experience more fluid and seamless and whatnot. That's our big focus. There are some major features coming down the line. We're releasing a budgeting feature soon, which is going to be really cool. So you'll be able to compare different trip plans and their costs and whatnot together.
Nice.
Where we have a big like UI overhaul coming, soon. Just a lot of sort of like things like that. What else do we have? So this hasn't been released yet. This is gonna be released in actually the next like 2-3 weeks here. It's our new Explore page within the trip itself. So right now in pilot, it sort of replaces Google Docs and Sheets. It's the place to collate all your information and plan things. But now you're going to be able to toggle between your plan and what we're calling Explore, which is it'll give you suggestions and all the cool things you can do in the places you're planning trips to. So it'll help you find things to do and actually add those to your trip now in a much more seamless way than before. It'll be similar to like Google things to do, but natively in your trip. So it's very helpful and handy from that perspective. And as we build out more of our like social features and like privacy stuff, because you got to build a lot of that for the social side.
Right.
You'll actually be able to see like where your friends have traveled to, or like where they're planning trips to, and these sort of things. And you'll be able to see your friends' past trips. So if you're planning a trip to like Vietnam, you'll be able to see like which of your friends have been there and like the places they went, and you can ask them about that because people get travel recommendations from friends, not TripAdvisor anymore. Really.
Right.
So,
that's another one. Right. It's from your friends for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, to sum it up, it's going to be a lot more of like social functionality. There's going to be a lot of more like user experience improvements, lots of small iterative changes to make the whole UI just feel a lot more fluid. It's going to be budgeting. We have a new I don't know if anyone's used TripIt before. They have basically the way it works is you send TripIt your emails, your email confirmations, and it creates like an itinerary for you. It's actually a really clunky experience. Ours is going to be awesome, and we're releasing that really soon too. So it's like an email forwarding thing. You can just send your emails directly into your TripIt pilot, and you'll have your trip all there. And it'll be very convenient for group travel in particular and business travel.
Right on. So for our audience that would like to learn more, where can they go?
Yeah, so, if anyone wants to learn more about Pilot, you can go to www.pilotplans.com. That's our marketing website. You can sign up to the app there as well. It's real simple. It takes 2 minutes, and you can start playing around with it. But if anyone wants to connect with me or ask any questions, they're welcome to message me on LinkedIn. Connor J. Wilson, I think, is the handle. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Connor, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a blast chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to the development with Pilot. So
thank you so much.
Let's keep growing. Thanks
Absolutely.
again.
Thanks, Eric.